The Grappling Hour is brought to you by Luda Gear, athletic support items created by grapplers for grapplers. Fire Grub Meal Prep done right.
Yeah. Check it out.
Listen, I'm excited that you guys have woken up this early to say hello to me, but today I'm bringing a friend, and here's what I have to say about this gentleman. He is a big guy. Like, he is powerful. So when I say, we discuss people are being beasts in jiu-jitsu. I literally have a beast with me on this line right now who could probably break me. But let's get the formalities out of the way. His name is Chad Wesley Smith. Maybe you've heard of him. I mean, he's got a YouTube page with over 200,000 subscribers. They are hilarious videos about lifting, about life, about beer, which we will talk about because that is my favorite part of what he is doing right now. But he is the owner and founder of Juggernaut Training Systems. And I think he's on record for hosting more programs than I do, which is insane because I host like about 9 different shows and categories. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest for today, Chad Wesley Smith. Chad, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, Raph. Thanks for having me.
Not bad. Okay, so I have to ask this very quickly because I wish I could read off what your exact records are for lifting, but I feel that I would bastardize it so much that I was like, I'm just going to ask you to tell the people what your PRs are.
Yeah, so competing in powerlifting in a belt and knee wraps as the equipment. I squatted 440 kilos, 970 pounds, benched 257.5 kilos, 567 pounds, and deadlifted 370 kilos, 815 pounds. And then my best total in a single meet, so squat, bench, deadlift in one meet, was 1,055 kilos, 2,325 pounds, which when I did it, I think was the 9th heaviest of all time. I've since been knocked down that list a little bit, but maybe to like 15th, 16th.
Records are meant to be broken.
Yeah.
That's the point. But can I ask this? Those are very impressive records. The most important of which that I have to wonder in my head is, do you make one trip with groceries? Is it one of those things where you go, no, I don't bring my work home with me. Once I'm done with the bar, I'm done.
Well, it depends how close a meet is. Sometimes, if you're trying to peak for things, then I might need to get like a little rascal scooter and a basket to not expend any extra energy.
So here's what I don't understand. What I don't understand is, at what point does this find its way into your life? I know that you were an athlete. I know that you did shot put in high school. I know that was something that was good to you. And I know that lifting weights and being strong and having a good strength training regimen is helpful when you're young. But what's the moment when you want like more power? Like you want to actively be doing this and lifting as more than just a hobby?
Something I was like fascinated with my whole life, from watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and Rocky and all that kind of stuff when I was a kid. Probably watched the Rocky training montage too many times, even to the point where my mom said I was 9 years old getting ready to play youth football for the first year, and I was taking the bungee cords that you would use to like hold stuff down in the back of a truck and like linking a bunch of them up and like lashing myself to a tree in the backyard to do bungee resistant sprints at 9 years old. So I was always fascinated by it. And then I did track through college and for 1 year as a post-collegiate, and was 2-time collegiate national champion in the shot put. And then after throwing for a year as a post-collegiate, I'd started my company, Juggernaut Training Systems, and was Olympic hopeful certainly in the shot put, but then just kind of got to the point where I was like, I'm also working about 70 hours a week training athletes. So I didn't really have time to pursue shot put the way I wanted to anymore. But I was like, well, I'm already strong as hell, so might as well do something with that. So let's try a powerlifting meet, and squatted 800 pounds at my first powerlifting meet, and that was back in 2010. So just kind of kept going with it.
So this is where it gets confusing to me, because all I ever think about in terms of lifting, especially in doing jiu-jitsu, is I just need enough. Like, I don't need to go over a certain amount. I just need to, like, be able to not be super embarrassing. Like, if you can put some weight on the bar, I usually feel pretty good about myself. But I've always had this thing where I'm like, man, I just could never imagine when someone goes, this is a very heavy bar. Like, I feel I would lose helpers who are going to help me with my squat or anything like that. What is one of the most surprising aspects that you've found about being in this profession? Because I love when I'm listening to people talk about their craft, and one of the things I found so particularly refreshing about the way that you approach weightlifting is that you're very candid about there are certain things that are very much your jam, and you say, this is what I like, and you're also very honest about saying, like, this isn't for me. This certain style is not really what I particularly do myself, but I'm happy to talk with you about it. So what is it that you found that is the most surprising about weightlifting?
Well, a couple things to clarify for the viewers and listeners is, so I'm talking about the sport of powerlifting, where weightlifting is actually its whole own other sport, which would be the snatch and clean and jerk, which a lot of people would call Olympic lifting, or some CrossFitters would call Oli. So that's kind of its whole other thing. We have another coach at Juggernaut named Max Ada, who is our weightlifting coach. But it's just kind of its own unique niche sort of world, like jiu-jitsu is, that has its own culture and stuff. And I've been fortunate to be able to bridge that gap in some ways, even going back to the origins of creating Juggernaut Training Systems, which I started straight out of college in 2009. We had this sport performance gym that I started off with literally 0 clients. So it was kind of cold calling people right off the bat. And one of the first people that I contacted, I got on the phone and I was like, oh yeah, there's all these MMA and jiu-jitsu gyms around Orange County. So I just went down a list and started calling them, and got in contact with a gym called Gigante BJJ, and talked to the guy on the phone. I was like, hey, can I come by and tell you a little bit about what we do? And I walked in, and there's a 6'7", 250-pound Brazilian dude named Fabio Vilela, and I was like, I can help you get better, stronger, better condition for jiu-jitsu. And he's like, all right, I'll try it out. And he was coming by to train, and 2 or 3 weeks later, he really liked it, and more jiu-jitsu athletes started coming to train. So I actually got the opportunity to do strength and conditioning for about 3 years for a lot of really, really top jiu-jitsu athletes. Romulo Barral, Kyron Gracie, Felipe Pena was coming from Brazil for like pre-Worlds training camps back when he was just a purple belt. And so I got to work with him, Victor Estima, Roberto Alencar. Pretty much for a time, like every Gracie Barra professor in Southern California, I think was coming to the gym to train, and they'd always be, I was really big in competing in powerlifting and strongman at that time, but they'd always be, oh Shad, come on man, like come on, you got to roll with us, you're gonna smash everybody. And we go to the tournaments, and people, I'd have my Juggernaut shirt on, and they'd be like, oh, it's the Juggernaut, come on, oh, look, Shad, you're gonna smash them, come on. And I'd done like 1 or 2 classes back then, and we had mats that we'd roll out at the gym for part of their conditioning, that I'd do a little bit of stuff here and there, but never really got into it, because I was like, I can't get my elbow or my shoulder injured because I got to do powerlifting meets. So it wasn't until about last August that I sort of was just bored of powerlifting at that time. I was like, all right, let's give jiu-jitsu a shot. So called up my old friend Felipe de la Monica, the head professor at Gracie Barra headquarters in Irvine, and he's like, yeah, fundamentals class, let's go for it, buddy.
See, this is fascinating to me, because I think when you mention all of these names, these are some of the strongest guys in jiu-jitsu. So that's a really big hallmark to you, and obviously their competitive success is no secret to many of us. But do you look at their efforts and just go like, that's okay? Like, to us, they're the strongest guy, but to you, it's got to be like, I mean, they lift okay.
Yeah, it's all relative for sure. Like what is strong enough in jiu-jitsu is not going to be very impressive powerlifting. I mean, Hamla was definitely the strongest weight room guy, but there are plenty of people, like even when I roll with Professor Philippe now, I mean, squat, bench, and deadlift, I'm probably 3-4 times as strong as him. But that what a sports science term would be special strength for jiu-jitsu, he has way more than me, whether it's grip or the way, I say that technique is the way that allows an athlete, and this is in any sport, technique is what allows someone to express their strength and power. So, a third degree black belt, Professor Farao, is expressing his strength so efficiently while I'm just spraying mine wildly, wasting it all over the place.
I have to ask this because you use the phrase special strength, and I don't think anybody has ever used that phrase unless to emphasize the special in regards to me. So what exactly does that mean?
So special strength is what a lot of people would probably call sport-specific strength. I just sport-specific strength in my community gets bastardized a lot, I think. So special strength is a term I'm using from a Russian coach named Anatoly Bondarchuk in an exercise classification system. So that basically a special strength exercise would be something that mimics the direction, duration, or velocity of a sporting movement, while overloading one of those qualities in some way.
A couple quick comments. There's a gentleman here, a good friend of mine named Des, who says that you look like Bert Krishner, the Machine. I don't know if you've seen this comedian, but he is amazing. He generally has his shirt off. Big shout out to Tommy Soring, who says this is awesome. I mean, thank you. It's mostly Chad. Chad, this is interesting to me because, okay, so maybe I can ask you this question. I've always, I was doing some form of weight training when I was doing freshman football, and I picked sports where I needed to be faster at a time. There was a space in time where I was actually the fastest human being for 1 year in my school. And then everyone outgrew me, and I was like, oh, I'm not fast anymore. That was it. That was a good run, everybody. But there was one thing that I found that when I was doing it, I would always, and this is what's made a problem for jiu-jitsu when you need to frame. So I found that my arm would start already starting to give out. And I've always had to recompensate for things in jiu-jitsu. So I thought I would ask somebody, when your arm is extended and it's not fully out and you feel like it's starting to wiggle, what does that generally mean? Because I've heard so many people say different things about that particular thing. Just based off a very short description, can you tell me what you think that is? Because that's one of the things that I've had as a hallmark of, I don't understand weights. I don't understand any of this.
Yes, I mean, so that's really just like a muscular endurance issue, most likely. But when you're looking at training qualities, jiu-jitsu involves a lot of what's called isometric strength, which has been a big change for me from powerlifting, strongman, and throwing the shot put, which is a lot of explosive strength, very short, powerful effort. Where in jiu-jitsu, you're having to hold positions for a long time in an isometric hold. So you're not moving in any direction. You're just kind of bracing that position. So a lot of that in jiu-jitsu, big muscular endurance component that's going to be involved in that, which, some is going to go to the fiber type of the athlete, like a really fast twitch, sprinter type of athlete wouldn't be that well suited for jiu-jitsu because their muscle is great for one, small all-out effort, a lot of power, but isn't going to be able to sustain or repeat that necessarily. So just developing those isometric qualities and muscular endurance is going to be what helps there.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, the whole reason I found jiu-jitsu personally is because I was like, I don't want to be at a gym. I'm not going to be on a treadmill. It's just not going to happen. I used to do that for a while, and it was just just get exhausted and not finding it. So that was part for me, was finding that regimen of, I think it's important people find something that speaks to them, and that they're active and they do something. And I told people, I was like, things change when someone's trying to murder you. And then all of a sudden you find they're like, you're not at all worried about how many times you've been working out or how long it's been going on. What is it that was doing the switch to you? Because I always ask this. This is a really important thing for me. But when did you know you were hooked to jiu-jitsu? Because, you've been doing it now for a few months. Brent's spoken very highly of your ability and your kind of grappling IQ. But there was a story that I saw that got your interest in it. But I'm curious, when's the moment that this is kind of something that you're like, oh, I'm actually really interested in this?
The challenge of it was interesting almost right off the bat, like getting beat by smaller people and at the same time, like sort of the first time I think I did like the move of the day from that day's class and like actually made it work on someone. I was like, Professor, did you see? I did the one that you showed us today. And so that was like a fun thing, but it's really just how endless seeming the technique is, and squat, bench, deadlift, all that stuff. Like there's technique and that's important, but it's the same every time. Where jiu-jitsu is like this seemingly endless technique to me. So I'm just excited about the process of learning that. And like when I roll with Brent or Professor Philippe or something, I know they have 100 different ways to go from every one of these situations. Where I'm pumped if I have like 3 things I know how to do from a certain situation.
I mean, you didn't pick slouches, let's put it that way, to learn from. And Brent's not necessarily a small guy, so I think he's got a good bridge into knowing, like, hey, I kind of recognize this is how your body might work. So here are some cheat code systems to maybe up your level a little bit quicker and faster. But getting to train with, I know, Philippe, and I've never had the opportunity to train with him, but I've commented on a lot of things he's done. I've seen his work. It's intense. So I'm sure that even, the reduced value version of it, of him just rolling still kind of like what would seem easier, is still like, no, it's deadly.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch him roll with people because it's so effortless, and like he's just kind of playing around, toying with people. And I did another podcast right before this, so I don't actually remember if I already told this story to you or was the other guy. But when I roll with Philippe, I can only make wrong decisions. Like wherever I put my hand, even if it was right, by the time I do it, it has become wrong. And I can tell, like, when he's baiting me into things, like I'm like, I could grab his leg right there. It's like he's just leaving it out there. No, he wants you to grab it, Chad. He wants you to grab it. Don't do it. And then I do it anyways, and then it all goes downhill from there.
It's all how we learn, though. That's the beautiful part. Like I do a lot of this where I feel that a lot of times professors may do what I like to call aptitude tests. So I may look at them and I go, I'm going to make this mistake, but I'm making it because I know you're trying to make a point. So I choose to put my hand here, and I'm in an omoplata. Okay, I'm dead now. Okay, that was fun. There's something I wanted to ask here, because there was an interesting moment where I heard in an interview that you said that you credit a lot of what you were doing in terms of your interest in jiu-jitsu to one John Danaher. You said that you were kind of listening and you were watching the way he was speaking, and it seemed to resonate with you. Do you mind describing that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'd probably been training for maybe 2-3 months at that point, and was listening, saw his episode of Joe Rogan come up and started listening to it, and just really appreciated his approach towards sport training, regardless of jiu-jitsu. Like his ideas have a lot of application to skill development for any sport, and that systematic approach he has to things. So there were things that he said that resonated with me, and I was like, we can take this and use it with our powerlifters and weightlifters that we coach. But at the same time, something I deal with in my realm is there's so much information available now to people that it can be definitely overloading to them and difficult for them to differentiate between like what's good and useful to listen to versus what isn't, because the barrier of entry for being an Instagram or a YouTube coach is pretty low. And I caught myself listening to John Danaher being like, because he uses a more technical language, where I think people do that in the strength and conditioning community to sort of overwhelm their audience and to make people think like, well, I better just agree with them because it sounds complicated, so I don't want to sound dumb and disagree with them. Where I caught myself listening to John Danaher and was like, I paused it and text Brent. I was like, hey, is this guy like actually good, or am I just getting caught up in the same thing that other people in strength and conditioning do because they can't tell the difference? Like I don't know enough about what he's talking about to really know like, is this legit or is it kind of bullshit? Especially coming from a lot of the nutrition and training stuff that I think Joe Rogan promotes on his show is kind of bullshit, but that's a topic for day. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't getting caught in that. And then obviously once Brent told me like, oh, he coaches all these, just killers, that I was like, all right, yeah, he's definitely, it doesn't just sound good, but I don't know what I'm listening to. It definitely is good. I'm planning on this Saturday, I'll be in New York to do a seminar on Sunday. So I'm going to go to Henzo Gracie Academy on Saturday. And I've been trying to get John Danaher onto my podcast, but to no avail. So maybe I'll just track him down.
Here's the weird part about John. I've interviewed him a few times. He's fascinating. If only in that he has this perspective on the game that I think he can articulate not only better than most, but being a philosophy major, he's sat and really thought about what he's saying years before he's even talked with you about it. So before he's even released the way or his process, that there's been years of dissemination and him probably in a lab going, no, no. So to really get the opportunity to ask him the kind of questions that I do, which usually take him a little bit off center. At one point I was doing a GSP impression to him and just saying like, legit or no, what do you think? And he just, with all seriousness, just goes, Mr. Raffesposa, that was by far the worst Joyce St. Pierre impression that I have ever heard. I'm going to espouse on it for over 49 minutes as to why it was so bad. And it's a particular, like, he looks like a Bond villain who does this amazing amount of training for these superstars who all come out of a factory. So you were very perceptive to know, even without knowing, that he's one of the guys. He's a guy who people spend hours reading his Instagram. He's putting out chapters of War and Peace on his Instagram every single day. So he's definitely legit. And I'm glad that you're going out that way. Definitely just go up, introduce yourself. I'm sure he's going to be fascinated of being like, now you saw Specimen. Now, a little bit about him. I believe he also has a little bit of a lifting history as well.
Yeah, he does.
So, just saying, wouldn't be surprised if he's just like, you're big, you don't need any heel hook attacks, but I'm going to give you 4. That'll change your life. So, that's cool. What are you doing out in New York this weekend?
So we have an event on Sunday called the Performance Summit, which is myself and 4 of my colleagues presenting on program design, technique development, nutrition, recovery, mobility work. So we'll have a couple hundred people at a Marriott out there listening to us talk about how to lift weights better.
This is interesting to me because now that you're a little bit into your jiu-jitsu realm and you're starting to get the hang of it, how much does wearing this gi still like resonate in your head? Because you've done things that have had nothing like this, but does it seem a little weird to be using these pajamas, or have you adjusted to the point where it's a normal thing now?
The pajama wrestling is pretty normal for me at this point. And some of my lifting friends, actually one of the guys I'm presenting with this weekend, Dr. Mike Israetel, he's a purple belt at Balance Jiu-Jitsu out in Philadelphia, and he's like a bodybuilder as well as a PhD. So Dr. Mike's probably 5'6", 250-ish, So it's fun to have people who are kind of in both worlds as well, and have our kind of little meathead jiu-jitsu community.
Yeah, okay, this is terrifying, and you might have heard me explain this to Brent. Jiu-jitsu's not made for you, and, like, I know they say it's for everybody, but at a certain point, when you look at a guy and you go, what I'm going to teach you is going to help you, unless you are rolling with maybe a power lifter, and then it's just kind of go with God and see what happens for you there. But I mean, I'm happy that you're doing this because I know what it does for me, and I know what it does for so many other people. And so for somebody who's already accomplished so much in an athletic form, I think people are always looking, especially athletes, like they don't know what to do when they've retired an element of maybe professional competition or going from high school to college. So this is a great way of keeping people athletic while also basically I tell people I'm doing a crossword puzzle when I'm in a bad spot. I tell them I'm like my brain, like I'll put myself in intentionally bad spots. And I told Brent the beauty of what he did was he was able to explain what it is I sometimes try to do or accidentally have done and been like, oh, I got out like this. And he was just like, he comes up to me and he goes, oh, is that really what happened? I was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, you completely did that wrong, but you ended up okay. And I was like, yeah, I don't do things right. I'm very bad at jiu-jitsu. That is pretty dope. I'm glad that you guys are forming your own culture. I have to ask this because, again, lifting is so foreign to me. But I want to come back to that in a second. I did see that you have, amongst your many branded forms of content on your YouTube, you've got suggestions on how to clean up people's technique. You have suggestions for everyday training, but then you've also got cool things where you do a podcast where you talk with other people in your industry. But I thought this was intriguing. Where did the concept of doing marketing and beer come from? Because I'm looking for every opportunity to drink. And I know it's a little too early, but if people didn't frown upon it, I would be drinking now.
Yeah, the nature and kind of tone of most of our content is pretty formal. Whether it's the technique tutorials or sort of these program design lectures, and our books and articles as well. So when we created the Jugglife podcast, I wanted to make that show a little bit more personality, have a little bit more fun with it, and people seem to really, really enjoy that. Whether it's our movie parody intros, which we've got a dozen or so pretty good ones of that, or just having more fun with it. We actually just released a couple weeks ago our first original film, a mockumentary called Heavy Ducks, that combines the worlds of Mighty Ducks heavyweights with a sprinkling of Icarus in it, where Tony Perkis plays a Grigory Rodchenkov type of character, doping Team USA to help them beat Iceland. But since people sort of enjoyed that stuff, I just started kind of a bonus podcast to that called Beers with Chad, which lets me maybe go more in depth on some of the topics we had covered in that week's podcast, talk about sort of behind the scenes type of things, or just current event type of stuff going on in the powerlifting and weightlifting worlds, and give my opinion on that. And I figured, everyone I think tends to do a little bit better on a podcast if they're one or two drinks in. So just get to share that part as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice parts I always tell one of my friends is always like, dog, you need to get beer sponsorships and you need to do this. And I was like, yeah, I mean, what do you think I'm going to do? Turn them down?
Yeah.
I find that to be a very refreshing thing. Do you have a particular brand of beer that you like, or is there something, because I noticed the realm of the beers that you were selecting, but I was curious as to, do you have a preference?
Definitely an IPA guy. I just started using this app called Tavour, which you get this push notifications and get beers from all over. So that's been helping me branch out. But I don't consider myself like a beer connoisseur by any stretch. It's kind of like people who are into wine tasting. Like no one knows what all these wine words mean. You just know like that one tasted good or that one didn't taste as good. I would like another of these, please. So
I have a fascinating way. I mean, I've always liked music, and I've always liked different arts, and I've always found that people overcompensate their love for things by trying to appear smarter than they really are most of the time. So a lot of times when people would give you like, oh, this new record from TV on the radio, it is one of the most brilliant records I've ever heard in my life. You can hear the synthetics and the sounds, and I'm like, you like it? That's what you mean, right? And they're just like, yeah.
I mean, I actually only listened to that band when they used to be called TV on the phonograph, and I only listened to them on vinyl. But
100%. Yeah. So here's what I want to ask, because we got to start wrapping things up, but I wanted to get a couple questions in here just in terms of making that bridge between jiu-jitsu and some form of structured training, whether it be for weights. In your experience, what are the benefits for jiu-jitsu practitioners who have found that great way of implementing it? Because I know a lot of us subscribe to the Marcelo, like, I only do jiu-jitsu to get better at jiu-jitsu, but you're somebody who's trained people who have won world championships. So what is the benefit to those who might not be believers?
Yeah, I mean, besides being able to create more power in the different positions, you're going to be more resilient against injury with a well thought out plan. It can improve, the general power and conditioning. That the sport practice, and this goes for athletes in any sport, is the most important. But creating that framework, that general base below it, if we were to think of like a pyramid, the wider you make the base of the pyramid, the taller you're going to be able to build it up. So while jiu-jitsu practice and live training and all that stuff is going to be the most important thing, and the better you get, the more important it's going to be. Being generally strong is going to allow you to do the techniques that you have better, going to keep you healthier in the long run. And it really started 2010, 2011 when I started coaching a lot of those guys. Is they had, for the most part, very limited general physical preparation. The guys who were coming straight from Brazil, where they had just done jiu-jitsu, and then I was getting some American guys who maybe were wrestlers or college football players or something, who were stronger and more explosive, but didn't have the jiu-jitsu skill. And the jiu-jitsu skill is going to be developed. So if the guys who have a lot of jiu-jitsu skill don't develop the other part of things too, it's going to catch up to them.
Very cool. So I guess before I wrap it up, one of the questions I also wanted to ask too is, where do you see your future for jiu-jitsu? Do you see yourself? I mean, listen, if I saw you in a competition, I think that poor other person would die. So, I mean, what is that kind of thing? Do you have certain goals for yourself that you're looking to accomplish now?
I compete in 2 weeks in Vegas. So I'm competing as an adult right now. I figure once I go up to blue belt, I'll probably start competing masters there. It would be awesome to be like world champion at masters, but I also think I'll kind of go back and forth a little bit, doing another powerlifting meet where I haven't competed for about a year and a half in powerlifting. So I'm sure I'll go back and do a powerlifting meet and then kind of come back to do jiu-jitsu, but really just doing whatever sounds fun to me right now. That I've competed in different sports, nonstop from when I was 5 years old to when I was 30 years old. So now just sort of doing whatever sounds fun, whatever sounds interesting, trying to, improve my game and take, kind of take some of these new avenues that jiu-jitsu has given me to form new friendships and relationships with, getting to go out and maybe train at Renzo Gracie or going and doing different stuff like that, and just have a good time with it.
That's cool. I mean, again, that's pretty dope that you have the ability. I guess, do they have masters for weightlifting and powerlifting?
Yeah, but for powerlifting, masters would start at 40, but it really should start at like 50, because there's people over 40 who are top world class
They
competitors.
get that old man strength sort of coming in a little bit early, because that's the whole thing. If I were any kind of academic, I would be doing all of my studies on old man strength, because I don't understand it. And I think it's some sort of weird He-Man power that you get at a certain age that I've never been told about until I guess you do it. Chad, I want to say thank you so much for your time, man. I know you got to get on out of here. Just real quick, do you mind giving any plugs that you want to do, or where can people find you? All the good stuff, sir.
Yeah, so they can check out our website, jtsstrength.com. Juggernaut Training Systems is the company. Juggernaut Training Systems YouTube, over 200,000 subscribers. The Jugglife podcast, which is on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and thejugglife.com. Follow on Instagram. I'm at Chad Wesley Smith, or the company at Juggernaut Training.
That's great stuff. And you know what, man? Here's the nice part. In the one area that I can tell you any sort of advice to, which is for jiu-jitsu. I mean, you've already got all the makings of it. You have a great mind for it. We hope that you continue to find a great amount of fun in it, because we are very accepting, despite my hatred of people who are stronger than me, which is everybody. But there is such a great place for having different perspectives, and I think it's really cool that you now get to kind of do the activity that you were helping people get so much better at yourself. So I really hope that you find some fun in it, and I'm going to be checking in on you. Now I know you train. I have eyes and ears everywhere in the jiu-jitsu community, so I'll be like, yeah, how's that coming? How's the spider guard coming? Is it looking pretty good?
It was funny because at Worlds, or the Novice Worlds, Flow Grappling was there, and Flow Elite, like another branch of their company, covers a lot of lifting stuff. So the cameraman, I finished the match, and the Flow Grappling camera guy comes over. He's like, "Hey man, like, big fan of your lifting, your YouTube and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then they put the video up, and Brent jokes, he's like, "You're probably the only white belt to ever have a video on Flow Grappling." And I told my girlfriend, I was like, I feel like the Anna Kournikova of like, people know who I am now, but it's not because I'm actually any good at the sport.
I highly doubt that. I feel it's one thing to talk, but I feel that you, honestly, if you have a brain for it and you've done athletic science, people who have a appreciation for that are the people who go home and diagram, or they try and figure things out. And I feel like that's the reason we get people like you, is because it becomes a challenge. And when you make that challenge out for yourself, people go home, and I'm sure you've now experienced this, where you go to bed and you go, half guard, what was I doing there? Oh my God. I should have done something entirely different from there. So I'm just, as a member of the jiu-jitsu community, I want to say welcome to us. We hope to have you around forever. And thank you so much for your time today, man. We look forward to seeing you. Have a great time in New York. And if you see John, tell him I say hello, good sir.
All right, will do. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem.